All
I'm
right.
recording.
Welcome, welcome, everybody, to this uh, conversation between me and Zoe. We've been having an amazing conversation before we even started.
As always.
As always, I just love you, Zoe. You're so great. And one of the things that's been coming up is this idea of fear and how uh, so many people are afraid and afraid of dying and afraid of eclipses. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Afraid of, like, if you don't do the right thing, you're going to go to hell, or if you don't, if you know that the options of, if we die, what happens to us when we die? And so we're afraid to die. And sometimes we just need to die to our old self, not
Yes.
really lose the body, the physical body, but just die to a way of being so that we can be
Mm.
born to something new. And we do that over and over. And we're recording this on April Fool's Day. April.
But we're serious.
Yes. And
Mm.
just for those who might not know, April Fools was something that started in 1582 when Pope Gregory instituted the Gregorian calendar he named after himself, even though other people created it. They made New Year's January 1st. And so people who were still celebrating New Year in the equinox time became the April Fools. And they would shame them. That was a way of shaming them so that they would stop celebrating the New Year in April or end of March or whenever it was around the equinox and start celebrating it at the date that the calendar had. It took a couple hundred years. It wasn't, I think, in England, and there were lots of places that didn't adopt the new calendar for almost 200 years. And then it
Wow.
finally did, because it was getting so out of sync with the seasons that they knew they had to do something. So, but then April Fools became like a time when you could prank people, play jokes on them, and they were playing, it became more playful and fun, but most people don't realize why it even started to happen.
Mhm.
And
And so, so it's almost like a big prank, right? It's like the day in itself is like, fooled ya.
right.
Like it took us 200 years, but we've fooled you all into thinking that the end of the year is in December.
Right. And that some date, an arbitrary date, January 1st, is the beginning of a new year, when it
Correct.
was always equinoxes or solstices that determined the new year, the new season, the new time. And for a long time, it was the March equinox, spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. And then they decided to move it,
Yeah.
change
And
it.
do
Go
you
ahead.
think that they decided to move it because it was just another way to get people to stop sort of paying attention to the old ways, quote unquote? Was this just a part of their whole PR package?
Yes, I feel
The
like that's true.
rebranding?
Although we don't necessarily know exactly why they chose a date called January 1st. And
Yeah.
I mean, they messed with the calendar uh, because, well, Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar decided, when they did the Julian calendar, which the Gregorian calendar is based on, they each wanted a summer month so people would be celebrating them. So they
Oh,
wanted those days to be 31 days. And so
uh-huh.
instead of 30, because it was 30, 31, 30, 31. And so they took days from February.
Okay.
And so I mean, there was a lot of shenanigans going on to make that happen. And
Mm.
so July is Julius Caesar's month. August is Augustus Caesar's month.
Right.
September means seven, but now it's the ninth month. October means eight. Now it's the 10th month.
That's fun.
So,
Mhm.
they shifted all of that. And a lot of people don't know. They don't understand what has happened to the calendar. But
Yeah.
also the other thing people don't realize is how Easter is figured out, or the resurrection, or I don't know, they call it Easter, but that's after a goddess named Eostar. So like, why did they name it Easter? And use bunnies and eggs. We were having a fun conversation about that too.
Yes. Like
Oh,
bunny, eggs, Jesus.
right.
Like, how do we get here? How do we get to a bunny rabbit and an Easter egg?
Right.
How do we get here, folks?
And it was really, I mean, and one of the things the Catholic Church was doing with the Gregorian calendar was setting the holidays or the holy days, the high holy days, holidays or holy days, to specific dates, like December 25th is Christmas. And there's certain dates throughout the year that they would do certain ceremonies and celebrations. But the one that's movable is Easter,
Mhm,
because it's the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. And
mhm.
so if if the full moon happens almost a month later, then Easter's almost a month later. If it happens a few days later, then it's going to be really quick, like we just had on March 31st, we had Easter. And that's the reason. So, but they don't explain that. Most
Mhm.
people don't understand that. It's an astrologically based holiday, holy day.
Correct. Correct. So for folks who don't already have this information, it's like these questions bear looking at, right? For people, it's like, why am I going to church on Easter and then going home and doing essentially a pagan ritual, right? Like these are, even though it's fun, I did it as a kid, keep doing it if you want, but it's like these questions bear looking at, right? There is room for deeper introspection here about what you call holy days and what you call evil. Because if you do look at these holidays, so many of them are so close to the pagan holidays. So it's almost like we wanted to like keep the people from revolting. We knew that we had Saturnalia, right? We knew that these big celebrations were happening for people. And so it's like, how could we take control away from the people, but doing it in such a way that they still get to celebrate things, but we kind of change the meaning, or we confuse things, or we conflate things. So there are a lot of things that need to be, yeah, investigated. Um,
Well, I just the whole thing about pagan, it just means earth-based.
exactly.
Became a dirty word. It became like,
Exactly.
oh, you're so pagan, like
Exactly.
somehow you're evil and bad because then
Right.
that they changed it. And
Right.
I think there are people who are reclaiming that these days, like I'm a pagan.
Yeah. Right.
Because
It's
I'm
and it was
connected
also
to
like,
the earth. I'm connected to the cycles and the seasons. I'm connected to the magic of the earth and coming from a heartful space. But it became like it was, these people were mean and bad and doing horrible things and uh, creating evil.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So how do we, I mean, how do we come to a place where we can just be accepting of it all and not judging any of it? If people want to have a relationship in a certain kind of religion, they should be free to do that as long as it's doing no harm to others.
That's right. And I think it comes with education. I think it comes with asking questions and not just blindly going along. Oh, we do this on this date, we do that on that date, and anything outside of that is evil. Like we really have to start investigating where these definitions of what's good, what's bad, come from. And I think once we start to really do that, then people will start to be more aware
Yes.
and more, because I feel like a lot of the reasons why we feel so disjointed, we feel so disconnected, is because on some level, our bodies know that these things are not correct. And we're trying to get back to that groundedness, but it's hard when you don't have that education, that real education.
Yeah. And relationship, like a real profound relationship with the earth, with the sky, with the seasons, with the moon phases, with everything that's going on. So here we are on April 1st with Mercury having stationed retrograde until April 25th. I think it goes direct. And
Mhm.
within that, so that we've got that going on. And then we've got also a total solar eclipse coming up. And this really fits in with what we're talking about because lots of people are absolutely terrified of a total solar eclipse. They feel like they have to go hide, that they need to not let the light in, they have to cover up all the windows, they have to do all these things. When the original intention, it was that they were going within, not not hiding under something or behind something or in somewhere, but it was going within to be more connected to the intention of what was happening. And so they could have they could be aligned with the intent of that time. Like some people believe that if you're out in an eclipse, you could die. It could be bad. Horrible things could happen. And I've been under eclipses, a lot of them, and that's not been the case, just saying.
Mhm. Yeah.
Says, but it will probably happen to you according to your belief. So if you believe it's going to be bad for you, it probably will be bad for you in some way.
Yeah.
But how do we get past that fear? How do we face our fears and really recognize and see that we have a calendar that was created for specific reasons.
Mhm.
We've been conditioned to believe a certain way, to be fearful. Like if I die, I might go to hell if I'm not a good person or not a good enough person, or I don't do the right things, or if I make one little mistake, it could be really bad. Uh,
Mhm.
and the fear is what often keeps people from embracing that experience of death. And think about fear, false evidence appearing real. It's like if you're afraid, it's probably false evidence appearing real to you. And so look at the deeper thing. I love what you were saying, Zoe, about that. Anyway, so this eclipse is with Chiron exact to the minute. And Chiron is the shamanic healer. How are we healing the fear that holds us back? How are we healing the fear that keeps us from being who we truly are? Magnificent, powerful, and co-creative in ways that are just magical and amazing, that restores the cosmic balance. And so how is Chiron supporting this total solar eclipse happening on April 8th, crossing the United States, coming through Mexico and crossing the United States? How is this a seed point for us to live in a new way, to face our fears, to transmute and transform them so they become our strength and not the thing that keeps us small and afraid
Yeah.
and not willing to step forward and be the magnificence of who we are here to be. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, Zoe, so you can help us with some additional insights.
Sure. Well, first of all, I love that actually this is happening during a Mercury retrograde, because the purpose of the retrograde is to reimagine things. It is to refresh your ideas around things. And so what more perfect time for that than this? So I split the deck just as you were talking, and I got, it's crazy. Card number one, hey, April 1st, April Fools, inward initiation.
Perfect. I love it.
New beginnings, number one. Starting over, number one. Refreshing, reimagining, doing all of those things, right? And what I love about this deck is to me, it's loosely based on fairy tales to me. And also, as we're talking about sort of biblical fairy tales, where we have the apple here, right? And so it's like, Eve eating the apple, et cetera, et cetera. We know that fairy tale that. But I love this invitation with that, she bit from the tree of wisdom, right? And so it's like, here's our invitation to dive into our wisdom. And what I also love here is that there's this chair here, there's this couch here, and chairs and couches to me represent comfort. And so it's like, this inward initiation doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It's only uncomfortable if we resist it. But there is a comfort in accepting this initiation. It's actually going to be harder to resist it than to just move into it, following our own unique wisdom, right? And so there's our invitation right there. And then let's just see if there's an herb that can help us navigate the month of April. Oh, wow. Look at this other card. I'm going to have to show that one too. Oh my gosh. Wow. So we got Paul d'Arco here, and it's all about metamorphosis with the number 7, right? The divine number 7. And this particular card resonates to the moon, and it resonates to Pluto. And we also have the shedding here, the shedding of the old, the shedding of the blood, the shedding of the mask, right? We know that when it comes to tarot, the moon is all about things that are hidden, information that we don't have. And then, of course, Pluto is about transformation. And so, what we're talking about here is this very intense and passionate, because of the red apple, because of the blood that, shedding, I would say, ancestral ties that bind, shedding family secrets. My God, I never saw, look at that, the old person. Look at that. And so it's like, perhaps this is what the self that we've been presenting to the world, as we talked about the death of the old self and the emergence of this self, taking off the mask, allowing people to see who you really are. And we have here reflections of artifice. So how, and there's the apple again. Look, the apple is green here.
Mm.
We know green is new birth, all, new things. And green apples are tart. So it might be a little tart as we reflect on the masks that we've carried, the images that we've shown the world that don't really represent who we are. And perhaps the thing we're shedding is, we have this emperor in reverse. So not being in our power, being stuck, being, resistant to being in charge of our own life and our own destiny. And of course, this card does resonate to the sign of Aries. And here we are in Aries season. And so, yeah, it's time for us to answer the call, to answer the challenge, to stand up for ourselves, to set healthy boundaries. And I think once we look at the ways that we've been artificial in our lives, in our families, on our jobs, some of us are working in jobs we don't even like. Once we really reflect on that, then we can take that inward initiation. We can move into that initiation and become who we truly are. And
I
so
love
these
so
are the April
yes.
possibilities of April. That's
Beautiful.
what.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And I think about Chiron being exactly with this eclipse to the minute,
Mhm.
which is something that could only happen almost never. It is such a rare event. Plus, there's going to be a comet that might be visible during the eclipse for people on the line of totality. So many factors. I'll put a link to a little video I did about this in the show notes. But um, the Chiron, it's like, how are we taking the wounds and turning them into our medicine? How are we transforming our fear into strength? And I just feel like that's what the cards really just spoke to.
100%. And so if there was homework for this month, because we also have ginkgo here that says breakthrough with the sword of truth. So very much like the Ace of Swords here. And the card, this herb resonates to Mars and Uranus. And so it's like if there was homework for the month, it would be like, how can I change? What breakthrough do I need to have? Truthfully, what do I really need to do to have this breakthrough? And so maybe drinking these herbs or taking these herbs, I'm not a doctor, I'm not prescribing them. I'm just saying there's
Right.
teas out there. But as you're drinking those teas, perhaps you're thinking, you're meditating on the metamorphosis and the change that needs to happen in our lives.
Beautiful. And that kind of
Yeah.
fits in with another thing I wanted to bring up, and that is how this month, Venus is going into the underworld, meaning she's getting so close to the sun. The sun is she won't be visible. So it's like going to the source, going to the source of light and life for our planet. That source energy, Venus is going to be there until July 10th. And it's considered the underworld time, or the time of death and rebirth. It's like, how are we going through a death of who we think we are so we can be reborn to who we truly are? And
Mm.
that's that phase. Well, the other thing that's happening on the day that Venus goes into the underworld, April 27th, Sedna, the dwarf planet Sedna, that was just, there she is, the dwarf planet. I think it was just discovered in 2003 or somewhere around there, because it's coming in close enough. She has 11,500 year orbit, meaning for she goes way out and not visible to us, and then it takes a long time for her to come back. And she's coming back, and she's going to make her closest approach to the sun. I forget the exact dates, but I also have another video I'll put in the show notes that has more of that information in it. And she's moving into the sign of Gemini. So she did that last year, and then she went back into Taurus for a short time, and then now she's coming back into Gemini, and it's on April 27th, as Venus
So,
is going into the underworld. And so she's coming back into our consciousness, into our awareness in a new way. And also the 29-degree Taurus point and the 0-degree Gemini point is where the Pleiades are located
mm,
at the Seven Sisters. We could
mm,
imagine that the feminine consciousness, the feminine has been in our subconscious. The strength and power of the feminine has been relegated to the subconscious based on Sedna's story, who sinks to the bottom of the ocean. She does give birth to the sea creatures, but she's not really allowed to be visible and seen. She's banished to the deep depths of the ocean, the subconscious, and she's coming back into awareness. And she's got a message, because Gemini is definitely the messenger. And she's got a
mhm,
message for us, and she'll be there for like 40 years. She'll be in Gemini. So we have that for a while, but she's with the Pleiades. And that was one of the stars of the magical stars of the ancient alchemists. The Pleiades cluster was considered one of those Bohemian stars. And that's when certain kinds of magic and ceremony would be done, when there was a planet with those stars. So
mm.
fourth planet, she's with those stars, and she's really with those stars at least from 2022 to 2026.
Okay.
But we could just imagine that she's coming back into Gemini as Venus is going into the underworld. So there's like a rising up of the feminine, but it's also Venus is going into the underworld to continue to die to what still needs to be let go of, surrendered to, and all of that, so that we can then really engage this expression of the feminine in our greater conscious awareness as she's rising up. So
And okay, so I have a couple of questions. So when does she go into Gemini again?
on April 27th.
April 27th. Okay. And so can you talk a little bit about because she was in Taurus and she went into Taurus last year?
She went into Taurus in the 1960s, and
Oh,
so she's been there for a while. And
oh.
the time that Sedna's in a sign is shortening. I had Sedna in Aries, and then in the like mid 60s it went into Taurus, and now it's going. So she went into Gemini last year. She dipped back into Taurus for just a short time, and then she's coming
Mm-hmm.
back into Gemini, where she'll be for about 30 to 40 years. I don't remember the exact dates on
I
that,
see.
but it'll be a while. It's not, she,
I see.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
that's what's
Okay.
going
Okay.
on.
I'm just thinking about like world events and what we could possibly expect with her being
Well, one
in the
of the
sun.
things I'm seeing is the rise of the feminine, the power of the
Uh,
feminine. They're changing, and the Dalai Lama said it was the Western women who had changed the world. Well, I'm seeing it in all these different groups of people that are led by women, mostly
mhm,
attended to by women, women who are women coaching, women priestesses, women ceremonialists. That women
mhm.
are just rising in the most spectacular ways right now, and go coming back online in a great consciousness, and the world is changing as a result. It's
It's
pretty
true.
exciting.
It's true. There's a whole movement of things for people who are on TikTok. You could see what's happening with, I just looked at mine. I have it in Taurus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to read because I wasn't really paying attention to Sedna, so I'm gonna have to like check that out.
Well, she takes a long time to move, but
Yeah.
because she's shifting signs right now, it's
Yeah.
important. And because it feels like she's rising up out of the depths of the subconscious into the conscious with a message for
Mm-hmm.
us. Because if we think about the Gemini energy being messenger, being the
Mm-hmm.
Iris, the rainbow goddess, she was the messenger goddess. So, yeah,
So it's like she's telling the stories, she's telling us the stories of what she learned under while she was at the bottom of the ocean.
yeah, Yeah, and maybe helping to rewrite the stories too. How are we rewriting
Of
these?
course,
stories? Yes. So
because
we
it's
have new
Gemini.
stories that we can live from rather than these old stories that we're done with. We
That's
it's not
right.
that they didn't have their value or their purpose, they did, but it's time to be done with them and move on to something
I
else.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. About Taurus and all of that. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I love it. Okay.
So everything that you shared with those cards also fits with that too. Just wanted
Yeah,
to put that. Yeah. So I think that might be what we have for now.
I
Um,
think so.
yeah, pretty cool.
Feels good to
Oh
me.
my God. Yes. And so stay tuned. We'll be back.
We'll be back. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.